Welcome back to the 5th episode of the Artifacts of the Frankenshrine series here on my channel. This time we're going to look at a few masks that I really am crazy about, that were always on Frank's shelves, of course. And one of them, actually both of them, had the mold issue where they were getting covered in that strange mold that was taking over parts of the collection. It was so bizarre. It was not taking over everything. Just certain masks got this strange covering of mold. One of these was really bad off. The other one was just not too bad. But the bigger of the two, Frank's brother and I really worked at it together. So one of them is a Death Studios mask from 1985. The other is a Kirk Brady original. So I'm going to show you these two now. They're both awesome. They're both similar skin tones, and they're both evil. So here we go. Check this out. Two demonic Halloween masks, and these are classics. So on the left you have Hellion. Death Studios is a 1985 copy, just absolutely beautiful condition. And then Belial, this is a Kirk Brady original that later went to Death Studios, and Jeff was producing these. Jeff was producing these in different colors, I think, at the time. But this sucker, let's see, what year is this one? It's dated. I love when they, makers put the dates and stuff on there. Look at Belial, 1978. Man, is that cool. Look at the detailing on this guy. You can see like the spine on the back of his head. That's really a neat little thing that Kirk added to this sculpture. It really, I just think it's a really awesome little detail there. You can see it's got muscles in the back, in the neck and the back and the shoulders. It's really got cool shape for a freaking Halloween mask. Most mask makers would just make this like a smooth backed mask, They really wouldn't, back then in the 70s and 80s, they wouldn't put all this time into making all that definition. Look at that. Isn't that cool? So I think that really sets this mask apart from a lot of others at the time. Not to mention, the sculpt is just so cool. He's got that weird, I don't know if you want to call it angular looking, structure to his head and in his face, as to where the Hellion is more, completely different shape. See what I'm talking about with the difference in these two guys? Kirk had a really different approach to sculpting. It's kind of a rough sculpture, but man, is it awesome. It's got its original paint. You can see like the blue veins on it and whatnot, but this guy was really bad off, covered in mold. So Frank's brother and I set up a little cleaning station in the garage when I was out there, and we got all these little brushes and water and paper towels, and we sat there and we worked on this one together. He and I cleaned it. He would hold, it was really dark at times where we were working, so he'd hold the light for me, and we really worked together at cleaning this guy. So I always have that memory of his brother and I doing that together. This guy always sat on a top shelf in Frank's room, and I remember always looking up at that mask, and I knew you could still get these from Jeff, I think you could still order a Hellion from Death Studios, but this was the original. I thought it was so cool that was always sitting up there for the longest time, for decades. Look at even the back of him, like I said, all smooth, nothing going on back here. But that Belial, look at that. Look at what Kirk Brady did with this. It's so neat. What a cool sculpt. But either way, these are two of my favorite demon masks, you can call them. Demons, devils. They are just, two evil horn dudes that come out close to the same time period, 78. They came out in the late 70s and mid 80s. And I believe when Jeff was making these, they were like pinkish flesh colored. There may be a purple one, but I really love the Kirk Brady paint job on this thing. It's got nice, you know, dark and light tones in the skin and the blue veins, and then it all aged so well. You know, like that's the cool part about vintage masks. I like the way they age and they get like a patina to them. You know, that really, really adds to the mask. For me, it does anyway. Some people are crazy and they want to like repaint things, and you know, I've got a friend out there that wants to repaint all of his masks. I gotta send it to the Tharps, have him, you know, paint it all. I'm like, no, it's got its original finish, don't touch it. But these are beautiful copies. This one had some mold on it, but came out looking really good. So just had to show these off on this episode because, man, they look so good down here. And Jeff's masks have great size to them. So, you know, he's looking small next to the Kirk Brady piece, which is just a huge mask. But even this has good size to it compared to most Don Post masks. You know, Death Studio stuff was nice and big. But, man, I just had to show these suckers off tonight. I love them both. And I'm sure you guys will remember these masks and totally dig them, too, because they look great down here. All right, let's see what else we'll show you. So this next one, I find this to be real special. I'm really glad it's here because Frank, you know, every time I saw him, he would remind me of this old story where he went to the 75 Famous Monsters convention in New York City and purchased some masks right from Captain and Company, right off of their table, which is, I mean, that's as cool as it gets for vintage mask collectors to hear a cool story like that. You know, I couldn't imagine what it was like being there. I've got old photos from that exact day he was there. There's guys wearing, you know, Cousin Erie masks right by the Captain and Company table. And I can visualize Frank walking up and purchasing one right there. I mean, it's all, there's all these great pictures. I think I should be able to show you a couple right now. But man, that day, I'm sure you remember the story of the Cousin Erie I showed you in one of the first Frankenshrine videos, where Frank went to the convention and he bought two masks from Captain and Company that day. One was the Cousin Erie, the 1975 Cousin Erie. The other, this beautiful 1975 Werewolf by Don Post Studios. And this, you know, it's one of those weird reddish-haired versions that you don't see too many of. Most post werewolves were brown. They had nice dark brown hair, you know. But this one, this is kind of a, when Post runs out of materials sometimes, like if they ran out of a certain color hair, you'd see weird stuff pop up like this, you know, these reddish colored werewolves. And this is the exact mask that Frank bought on that trip to New York City, and he brought it home on the train inside of the 1975 Famous Monsters Convention plastic bag. And that plastic bag is still hanging on the wall to this day. Every time I go down to the collection room when I'm there, I look at that bag before I go down, and it just totally reminds me of that story where he went and bought these masks at the convention. And it just holds a special place to me, you know, knowing where this one and the Cousin Erie came from. I'm going to go get the Cousin Erie out of the case and put them together because, honestly, I don't think the two masks have been together since the 70s. They've been so far apart in his collection room. They've been, you know, I brought them home. They've never been together. But let's put them together and I'll show you those two masks from that cool story. All right? I'm going to go grab the Cousin Erie right now. So hang tight. So check it out. This is so cool. These were brought home in the same bag in 1975. And who knows way back when where Frank was displaying them. You know, I'm sure his collection was not as vast as it was in, you know, in recent years. But, you know, he probably had these close by each other for a little while in the beginning. But as his collection grew, these masks got farther and farther apart from each other. And here they are reunited side by side. And a young Frank sat on the train ride home from New York City with these in that plastic bag. Remember, they were nice and soft back then and pliable. You could easily put them in a bag and carry them home, and it was it's one of the coolest bags ever. And here they are. I just thought you'd like to see them together because it was a great backstory on these pieces. It's awesome that these were Frank's, but his story that he would always share with me, that same story over the years, because he just you know, that was in his very early days of collecting. 1975, you know. I was 3 years old in 75. And to me, knowing when I was 3 years old, Frank was out at a freaking monster convention buying Don Post masks. That is incredible to me, you know. It's just such a cool story, and it blows my mind that guys were doing this way back when. I mean, 1975 was a long time ago. I mean, think about it. The days of disco and punk rock. Guys were buying Don Post masks, you know. So, all right, let's show you one more for this episode of the artifacts of the Frankenshrine. Tonight, I had to dig out, you know, these two special pieces because they mean a lot to me, and I knew Frank loved them. But man, as his collection grew bigger and bigger, these kind of went on the back burner, but I know he always loved them. So, all right, let's go on to the next. Now I'm going to show you one of my favorite pieces in Frank's collection that obviously I'd always see things on his shelves. And I always say, oh, I saw it on his shelves, but I would stare at this mask because of the thing that got me about it was the facial expression on this little girl. And she has this cool grin, and she's kind of looking off to the side. You're going to know exactly who this is when I show you this piece. I'll give you one clue. This girl would barf split pea soup all over people, including the priest. And she had a real foul mouth when the devil took over her soul. So here goes Regan from The Exorcist. Now, this particular copy, this is a special one. Not a lot of people would know what this is. You know, some of the old timers out there, like, will for sure recognize this. You know, your guys like David Lady, Dante, you know, they'll know exactly what version of Regan this is. But a lot of you are not going to recognize this one. This was made in the late 80s by Paul Clemens. Paul Clemens was commissioned to do one piece like this for a collector that actually used it for a haunted house back in like 87 or 88. And I always thought the story was that collector could have been Frank. You know, in David Lady's book, it says, you know, the Regan mask was made for a collector who wanted it for use in a haunted house. And I wonder if it was Frank, you know, I'm not sure. I remember Frank talking about possibly working at a haunted house, but I don't remember completely. Maybe his brother can help me with that. But either way, this is a really cool Regan. I just love that where she's looking off to the side. A long time ago when it was first made, those purists out there, like, you know, the serious guys in the hobby, they weren't too happy with this piece because of the size. It's like the size of a woman's head. If you look at Regans done by like Henry Alvarez and whatnot, they're a child size. Like they're true to scale, as to where this Regan is like the size of a woman's head. But I don't care. Like I love it. I love it. And the story goes, I think this is one of about 5 pieces that Paul did. But it's got really great paint up on it and detailing, like the bruising and the scars, the scratches. Let's turn it around here. Let's move this hair out of the way. But done really well. Like, Paul was a very talented mask maker back in the day. I've got more to show you of his work in the future, but this to me is one of my favorite pieces. And of course, I'd always tell Frank, like, why don't you sell me that Regan? Frank had all kinds of Regans. They're all over the place. Like that, The Exorcist was one of his favorite movies of all time. And I would tell him, like, we would sit and talk about it. And I'm like, Frank, that movie was the one. That was the only movie that terrified me, like, as a kid. Now, you know, it's very hard to scare me at all now, but as a child, that freaking movie did it. That was the most terrifying movie of all. I remember, I remember my dad, we were watching it once, and we're in the living room at his house, and he's like, go in the basement and get me a beer. I'm like, okay. You know, I was just a young kid in that dark basement. You know, I was always creeped out to go down there and get a beer out of the refrigerator because it was pitch black. You had to go down the stairs, and you're thinking, Regan's down there, some monster's down there, you know, and I'd get all the way down there. I'd try to run to that fridge, and my dad would start going boom, 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 with his feet on the floor, scaring the shit out of me, and I would just run back up the stairs with a beer. But pretty funny, you know. It took many years for me to watch this film ever again, you know. Back in the day, I'm like, I don't want to watch it. I finally watched it, now I laugh, you know. Still a classic, one of the greatest horror films ever made, and this is a great Regan. I really never had a good Regan in my collection. That was another reason I'd say, Frank, you got these Regans, just tell me that one. And of course, he would say the same thing he always said, don't worry, someday you'll get her, you know. And I'm like, all right. And here she is. I'm so happy that this piece is here because it's something that Frank and I talked with quite a bit. You know, we'd sit down in his collection room, we'd talk about all of his masks, and this was totally one of my favorites. I had to share it with you guys. Let's see if I can get one more on this video. One more small little mask we can just fit in the last part of this this episode. What could it be? There's masks everywhere. Oh, I see one. It's a real small one. Let me go get it. Hang on. Really got lost in the whole shuffle when you looked in the collection. Actually, no, it's humongous. So, this is another beautiful Metaluna mutant from my favorite, you know, one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time, This Island Earth. And it's funny, a friend of mine's like, that movie, you know, is okay. The mutant's amazing, the creature design. I'm like, yeah, but that's why I love it, because it's a weird B movie, you know. I don't mind if movies are weird and boring sometimes, as long as they're old and it's science fiction. Like, I don't care. I love sitting through all that. But this copy is so neat. You guys know I have another movie mold mutant over there, the big one. Mine was cast in the 70s. This one, however, it holds a special place here in the collection because a long time ago, Frank actually got to visit Don Post Studios. He took a trip to California where he got to meet a lot of mutual friends that he and I had, and he went to visit Post Studios, and they painted up this beautiful mutant for him in 1988. And this thing sat under a plastic bag for many years in the basement, and the claws would be there. It'd all be just wrapped up in plastic. And I said, man, I'm like, Frank, you got to get that thing on display. It's like a shame. It's got to be, you know, seen. And he just took super nice care of it, kept it in the dark, and you know, I think he probably displayed it a lot in the beginning years when he had it. And then as the collection grew bigger and bigger, he had to kind of like put it off to the side, and but he took really good care of it. You know, it was all covered from dust, thank goodness. It actually has another set of claws, the 70s style claws. These are the first style 60s claws that they casted up for him in 88. You know, these are the big weird ones, which are really cool, you know. But there is also another set of claws that go with this one. But what a neat thing, because I love the detailing on the eyes. It's a lot different than my other movie mold copy. Although my other movie mold copy is spectacular. I'm going to go over there and show you. And right now I have a weird yellow light in here that's it's not staying, but I wanted to show you the difference in these two masks. I like this one a lot because it really looks aged. You know, this one was I think this one was done in 1978, 10 years prior to the one I just showed you from Frank. But they're two different, you know, two different paint ups, two different artists I think did these, and I love them both. I recently told someone, I said, yeah, these are huge, they're big, they're bulky, they take up a lot of collection space. I said, if I find 10 more movie mold mutants in the coming years, I'll buy all 10 of them. Like, I just can't get enough of the Metaluna mutant. That is hands down one of the greatest creature designs of all time. In the history of science fiction, this is way up there on the list, you know? Just classic. What a classic design. This and so I'm glad you got to see this. It's kind of over time, I have him propped up under the front. Over time, he's kind of drooping forward a little bit. It's foam filled. It's all foam filled from Don Post Studios. But I'm going to try to do something with a custom base with like a spike underneath it to try and get it so it props up nice and straight, and it will no longer sag on those shoulders. And these aren't actual shoulders. A lot of people think these were shoulders that were part of the mold. It is part of the mold, but it's just the way the mold was. They weren't intended as shoulders, but it looks really cool with that piece on there. So awesome detailing on the eyes, and it's just a beautiful mutant. I reached out to Kathy Tharp to see if Rob happened to paint this one. I never got a response, unfortunately, but I'm thinking Rob Tharp may have painted this for Frank. So hopefully one day I'll find out. But just a gorgeous mutant. So glad you guys got to see this episode of the Artifacts of the Frankenshrine. This is the 5th episode. So many more to come. And we're going to get into a really cool facet of Frank's collection that is very special. Special to me and special to a lot of older collectors out there. Regarding pieces from the Halloween Society. It's not something that a lot of collectors may know about or are trying to accumulate in their collection or try to acquire over the years, because they're hard to get, and it's kind of a niche group of guys that like these things. But Frank had a nice grouping of Halloween Society pieces. I'm going to go through and do a one video per piece. Okay, I've got 10 of them here from Frank's collection. And we're going to slowly do a special video on each one. I'm going to tell you all about the Halloween Society and who they were, the artists that made these special pieces for the Halloween Society. So just, there's a lot of great content coming regarding that stuff. It's awesome history of this hobby. I think a lot of you are going to love. So thank you once again. Thank you to Frank's brother. It was great hanging out recently, and I hope to be back soon. And most of all, thanks to Frank. You know, his collection is like no other, and in time, I can't wait to show it to you. All right, guys, I'll see you soon.